The Sex Discrimination Act will be amended to include judges and politicians who are currently exempt from the laws. The federal government has made its long-awaited response to the Respect at Work report after considering it for more than a year. It's agreed to all 55 recommendations either in full, in part or in principle. Tom Lowry joins us now from Parliament House in Canberra. Tom, g'day. So what's in this response?
Yeah, good morning, Joe. This is the comprehensive report, a response to that Respect at Work report compiled by the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Kate Jenkins. She spent about 18 months working on it and compiling it, handed it to the federal government in January last year. It was made public in March, and more than a year on, we're seeing that response. As you mentioned, there are 55 recommendations in total. The government's responded positively to all of them. Some of them will be implemented in full, some in part, and some are agreed to in principle if they don't directly relate to the federal government. We haven't seen the detail of exactly what's being responded to in full or in part as yet, but I'm sure we will see that detail at some point today. The government says its focus is really on prevention, so there are going to be some measures around education and training and also supporting targeted research into some areas too, but there are some specific responses, some that will have to be legislated as well. One that's drawing a lot of attention is ensuring that politicians and judges are included in the Sex Discrimination Act, which they're currently exempt from, but there will be some complications around how these laws might apply to those people, given they are, somewhat difficult to, for example, fire. You can't sack an MP, and it's very difficult to do so with a judge. They also want sexual harassment to be considered serious misconduct under the law, which would enable that to be used, if need be, to sack someone. Here is the Attorney General, Michaelia Cash, detailing exactly what they want to do.
Our aim is to reduce complexity, but also strengthen the national framework for addressing sexual harassment. For example, we will amend the definition of serious misconduct in the Fair Work regulations to include sexual harassment. We will also clarify that sexual harassment can be a ground or a valid reason for dismissal. This will give employers the certainty they need to take action. But what it also says to employees and victims of sexual harassment is there are consequences for this action in the workplace. We're also going to amend the Human Rights Act so that the President's discretion to terminate a complaint under the Act is extended. Currently it's 6 months. As you know, victims don't necessarily come forward in that 6-month period.
Yeah, so Tom, the detail of this isn't particularly clear at this stage. As you say, we don't know which recommendations the government has only accepted in part. But to what extent is this likely to ease the criticism from some people about the government's handling of these issues recently?
Yeah, Joe, there's no avoiding the context here, and the Prime Minister didn't try and steer away from it in his press conference either. This is all sort of part of that broader national conversation around sexual harassment issues that have sort of been sparked by some of the very public incidents here in Parliament House over the past few months. The PM said that, those matters have really just heightened and drawn attention to some of the issues raised in this response. But he's also pointed to the need for the public to play its part as well, saying this isn't an issue just confined to the walls of Parliament House. This is something society needs to deal with as a whole. Here's what he had to say.
This is a culture we have to change right across our society. We will be stepping up to our responsibilities, but we all, each and every one of us, individually, have a responsibility for our own behaviours and our own actions and what we can positively do to ensure that we can change the culture of behaviour.
Now, the government said, while you mentioned there that we haven't seen the detail of exactly what's in this response, the government does want to act reasonably quickly on it. The Prime Minister says he wants to have legislation before the Parliament at least by the end of this year, if not in time for the May budget sittings, which are really just a month or so away. He's also appealed to Labor and the crossbenchers for their support on this as well, saying this is an issue of such national significance, it really should be a bipartisan issue.
Tom Lowry there in Canberra.